I review TVs, but I don't replace my main TV at my house very often. It's a pain to take them off the wall and swap it. So the TV I've had sitting up above my fireplace for 4 years was the LG G2, and I loved that display. But it had a giant problem. For the past maybe like 10-ish months, every time I turned it on, I got an error popping up telling me I had to run a pixel refresher. No matter how many times I ran that refresher, it would not go away. But I loved it so much that I didn't replace it. But the one knock I had on it was always like brightness. I always wished the TV could be brighter. And as I review all these mini LED TVs that are like eye-gougingly bright, one thing kind of kept me from swapping my home set, and that was blooming. And maybe it's something that like I noticed because I reviewed these things, but I had never seen a backlit set, so like an LED TV that didn't have blooming. And that was until I saw TCL's X11L at a pre-brief for CES. And I absolutely fell in love with that set because it did things that traditionally only OLED has been able to do. So TCL sent me an 85-inch, off came my LG G2, X11L went up. This video is not sponsored at all. They have no say in what I say or don't say. They did just send the set over for review. So I want to tell you about the X11L and why it's not coming off my wall. What did TCL actually do and why does it matter? I know that TCL maybe has a reputation of being like budget stuff and technology's been better of recent years. And then there's the Sony kind of merger acquisition. So like the TCL name in the TV world has like been in the zeitgeist. But there's a real answer here and it's simpler than the spec sheet makes it sound. So think about like how a regular mini LED TV works. You've got thousands of like tiny LED lights, mini ones, sitting behind the screen acting as the backlight. Those LEDs are grouped into sections or zones, and the TV dims and brightens each zone independently depending on what's on screen. So dark scene, the zones behind it go dim. If a huge bright explosion, those zones light up. The more zones you have, the more precisely the TV can control like what's dark and what's bright, and the less that glow bleeds into areas that are supposed to be black. That's bleeding, that's what blooming is. That's the halo. TCL put up to 20,736 of those zones in their 98-inch model. So obviously, big TV. For reference, a TV considered excellent 2 years ago probably had a few thousand. That zone count alone is a big part of why the blacks hold the way they do. And I sat through a lot of pre-CES briefs where brands walk you through slides full of numbers that don't mean jack until you actually get the TV in your house and sit down and watch it. This one is different. And the zone count, I think, is part of why, but it's not the whole story. The other half is color. And this is where TCL did something that the rest of the industry just hasn't done. So most of the TV brands you know, so at least in the US, Samsung, Hisense, Sony, are moving towards what's called RGB mini LED, where instead of only one white LED per zone, you actually get 3 separate ones. You get a red, a green, and a blue. That's the RGB part. And the idea is that you're creating pure color right from the light source. And they work awesome, but the problem is those 3 colored LEDs sit next to each other, and they tend to bleed into each other at the edges. So you get color where you don't want it. It's like a faint color cast creeping into areas that just should be neutral. You might have heard this term, it's called color crosstalk. And it's subtle, but it's there, and it gets harder to control the brighter you're pushing the TV. TCL looked at that trade-off and went a totally different direction. So they kept the single LED per zone, which is why they can hit that zone count, but completely rebuilt the layer that converts that light into colors. I should say that TCL's technology in X11L is called SQD. It stands for super quantum dots. And the quantum dots themselves are smaller, but that's only part of it. There are more of them and they're packed closely together. And that density is what gives you more precise color reproduction and better contrast, not just contrast between bright and dark areas of the image. And the gradients between colors are smoother and more accurate, which is exactly how they're avoiding the color crosstalk problem. And they've avoided it completely. And the result is you get the color accuracy of those RGB systems without the bleeding, and you keep the zone count that gives you the black level control. And for the people buying TVs, all this matters for what you actually watch. All right, so I wanted to go through all of that, but here's how it is having it up on my wall. I was trying to get it up in time for the Super Bowl, which was sort of a real world test you can have, at least in my house. Afternoon game, sun coming through the windows, act like it always does. The conditions where my G2 would have me kind of thinking about closing some shutters. The X11L didn't care at all. It didn't matter what the room was doing. The panel did an incredible job. It's still glossy and definitely has glare if you go looking for it. But the TV throws out so much light that it just overpowered that glare. In all my years testing displays, this is the brightest TV I've ever put in front of my face. The sun stopped being a factor, not because it was blocked out, because the TV was just brighter. So after the game, I wanted to push it somewhere harder. We missed the second Wicked movie, so I watched Wicked for Good with my daughter, which ended up being essentially like a stress test for color and brightness. Hue saturated greens, a vivid production design, exactly the content that either looks spectacular on a good TV or falls apart on one that's over processing. It was spectacular. The color felt rich without looking pumped up for artificial. My daughter, who's 6, had no opinion either way, but kept sort of looking at the screen, and I kept asking her what she thought about it. And she's like, it just looks great. So I do want to take a quick break to thank video sponsor 11 Agents by 11 Labs. Yeah, so that wasn't actually me. That was digital AI me from 11 Labs. Hello. In full disclosure, we use 11 Labs in post-production on like probably 15% of all of our videos. If I mess up a word or a line needs a patch, we tend to generate it kind of in their voice tools. And I don't think in the context of the video, most people can tell. It's been incredible for like efficiency or if I'm traveling. It is awesome. So in 11 Labs reached out about 11 Agents. We're already in. So 11 Agents lets you build real-time voice and chat agents that actually sound human. You can upload your knowledge base, configure how agents handle things like phone calls, and how to deploy them. It literally can take like minutes. So what I built with it is a studio booking line for the team. Something that we have to do all the time here so we don't overlap with shoots. Anyone on the crew can call in and reserve a time. I've uploaded all our equipment lists, default session links, and then blackout dates. Hooked it up with Google Calendar and give it personality. You're a friendly, organized studio coordinator. Tell it the environment, what it's doing. It's handling booking calls for us. Pull the tone, warm and efficient, and then tell it the goal. And that's it. Then you can just hit publish on it and it's good to go. And you can give it a phone call.
Hi there, this is Echo. I can help you get something scheduled. What are you looking to book?
So you can type it, you can say it, whatever you want. So I'm asking it, can I book the main TV room for the JR channel next Tuesday at 11?
I can certainly check the availability for the main TV room for the JR channel next Tuesday at 11 o'clock.
It's got over 70 languages on a single platform. People can use it for support, lead qualification, reception, outbound campaigns, anywhere a human voice needs to be in 2 places at once. If you do want to check it out, there's a lot of cool uses for it. Links in the description down below. 11 Labs in general is unbelievably incredible. 11 Agents just builds off of that. If you want to build your own, check it out at 11 Agents, but links are down below. But then I went looking for trouble with the set, right? And I don't want to make this a versus OLED video. OLED's incredible, this technology's incredible. Both things can absolutely be true without disparaging one or the other. But I had to test black levels. There's one episode of television that everybody in the industry uses. It was the Battle of Winterfell from Game of Thrones. That episode is so dark that people were adjusting their TV sets and settings in kind of real time when it originally aired. It is a worst case scenario for a backlit display. Pulled it up, and I want you to see what I saw, because we put the same scene up on the Samsung S95F QD OLED we have in the studio. Take a look at that. The S95F is a phenomenal display. It's one of the best OLEDs you can buy right now. I want you to look at what the X11L is doing next to it, because my honest expectation going in was that I find the blacks looking gray, that familiar mini LED compromise. That is not what I found. But just to confirm, I did something that was probably ridiculous. I grabbed my OLED iPad. I pulled up a full black screen on both, so pixels off on the OLED, and held it up right next to the TCL. Again, iPad's OLED, pixel level dimming, no backlight, true black. That's the reference. Take a look at what you're seeing here, because it's not what I expected either. The gap that should be obvious just isn't. And since we're already comparing it to OLED, there are 2 other things worth addressing always come up in the conversation. The first is burn-in. Modern OLEDs are dramatically better about this than they used to be, and most people will never see it. But if you watch a lot of sports with a static score bug sitting in the corner for 3 hours, or you pause it a lot, or maybe doing a game with a constant HUD, it's something you think about. There's nothing organic in the X11L's panel to degrade, so burn-in will never be a concern. The second is ABL. It stands for automatic brightness limiting. OLED panels protect themselves by kind of pulling back the overall brightness of the image when a large portion of the screen is bright. You might not always notice it, but it is happening. A big like white explosion on screen, whole image dims slightly to compensate. The X11L has no reason to do that. It has 10,000 nits of brightness headroom. It just delivers whatever the content calls for. The processing deserves a mention too because it's better than it has any right to be on a TCL. Upscaling non-4K content, so like regular cable, streaming at lower bit rates, YouTube is generally impressive. I think Sony has set the standard for upscaling for years. I put the X11L right alongside them here. It's not magic, but it's noticeably better than what TCL was doing even a year ago. And that improved processing carries into gaming too. So my boys are on their PlayStation constantly as TV handles it without a second thought. Game mode kicks in automatically. The second it detects a console, input lag drops to where it needs to be. I didn't have to touch a single setting to make this happen either. You got 4 HDMI 2.1 ports, which is generally rare. It means you're not swapping cables every time you switch between devices. HDR performance in games is specifically something else on this panel. That brightness headroom that helps so much with movies and sports is the same thing in games too. So just bear that in mind, it's good for everything. I wanna segue a little bit to audio with the set, and I'll talk more about what the X11L has built in. My G2 I had connected to, I think it was like a 6-year-old Marantz receiver, and it stopped doing the input smart switching, so my kids would turn on the PlayStation, it wouldn't switch. They have to go to the receiver and turn knobs, and they messed up all of my settings. Sony sent over their mid-range STR AN1000 that solved everything. It switched how it should. It made everything sound even better. Actually, I should probably upgrade my old in-ceiling speakers. Just to say that any smart TV and any receiver should work well together. But since I'm showing my house, the AN1000 is what I have. The TV is great, but is not perfect. The first problem is on the back. I think because that Bang & Olufsen speaker on the bottom, which I'll talk about, TCL had to move the VESA mounting points. So my TV is already high. It's mounted over a fireplace. So I had to redo where my mounting points were in the wall. I had to move outlets, a gigantic pain. Just bear that in mind if you're thinking about mounting this up on a wall. Once it's up on that wall, you might not be sitting directly in front of it. Off-axis viewing is better than most mini LED TVs I've tested out, but it still ain't OLED. Straight on from the couch, you're not even thinking about it. The second you move to the side of a room, you'll notice it. If your couch is a straight shot to the screen, you're fine. If your room is shaped like mine or people end up watching from weird angles, know that it is there. Also there, the calibration takes some time too. And I say this as someone who's reviewed enough Sony TVs to know what out of the box accuracy looks like. You pull this thing out of the box, turn it on, and it's ready-ish. It comes in hot with aggressive default settings that have to be tamed before you're sort of seeing what the panel can actually do. And I think it really is worth doing. Just don't set it up an hour before, whatever Super Bowl, expect it to be dialed in. I do want to touch a little bit on audio here. There's a giant, essentially, soundbar built into the bottom of the TV. They worked with Bang & Olufsen, which is great if you need that. If you use surround sound like I have set up, that just takes up that much amount of mounting space on a wall. And for somebody whose TV is mounted above a fireplace, that amount of space matters a lot from doing this to doing this when you're watching TV. But the speaker setup, how they have it tuned, does work really well if you don't want to use anything external. What's left after all this though is a TV that I generally look forward to sitting in front of, and that hasn't happened to me in a while. Which brings me to the price. Just under 8,000 bucks, 55-inch. And I've thought a lot about this. My instinct is always to tell people to wait. Let the price come down, let the bugs get worked out. And that instinct, I don't think is wrong here either. TCL's flagship pricing has dropped significantly over the past, and SQD is coming to less expensive models later this year. So patience will probably be rewarded, but my actual take after living with the set on my wall, if you're already in the market for a top tier TV and been going back and forth between this and a high-end OLED, the X11L makes a real case for itself at this price. So listen, there are a lot of really good TVs. And if you're spending $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 on a set, you are looking to get the best of the best. And in all honesty, TCL has not been the consideration for that top tier amount of money. So I get the perception that people might have. But I will say, if you get a chance to see this set in person, compare it next to a flagship OLED, I think you'll be surprised. OLED is incredible, and if OLED's what you want those sort of just pixel off black levels, there's a lot of incredible options. But if you want something that seems to do everything some version of well, I have been blown away by the X11L. And I would imagine if I covered up the logo and just said, look at this awesome TV, I think a lot of people would assume that it was just OLED. Everything looks good on this set. If my knock on it was a pain in the ass to mount, I only had to do that once and I don't think about it, I'm taking that as a win. It's not perfect, but it's really, really close. And it's probably one of the most perfect sets that I have ever reviewed. If you're looking for a flagship TV, regardless of the technology in it, at least look at the X11L. And if you give it a fair shot, I think you might find your next set.